Flagler Street runs through the heart of Miami. I wanted to do a walkthrough of a small part of it, but then I realized it's in the process of being torn up. It occurred to me that maybe there was some information on why that is. Sure enough, I found some background on what they're doing. So let me take you for a little walk and tell you about the project. First off, Flagler Street is literally meant to be a dividing line. Streets south of Flagler go up in numbers from 1st, 2nd, etc. And streets north of Flagler also go up from 1st, 2nd, etc. It's a funny system that makes you mind whether you're talking about North 7th Street or South 7th Street. Flagler Street is named after Miami's co-founder. In the late 19th century, large landowner Julia Tuttle convinced railroad tycoon Henry Flagler to expand his railroad south to Miami. The two essentially made Miami a thing. I'm starting my walk here in Bayfront Park. Back in the mid-1980s, the park was almost completely gutted and redesigned. See the link in the description for my Bayfront Park video for a full walkthrough and more about that history. Part of that design put a giant fountain at the end of a path extending out past the end of Flagler Street. You can think of this decorative Pedestrian Avenue as an extension of Flagler. And although it's meant to be for pedestrians only, you can often see cop cars and service vehicles parked or driving along it. Flagler Street technically begins where it meets Biscayne Boulevard here along the edge of Bayfront Park. The boulevard was also renovated as part of the Bayfront redesign in the 80s. I like the eye-catching pattern in the brickwork along the sidewalks. Unlike some cheap street work done in some cities, this isn't paint on top of an imprinted pattern on asphalt. They actually custom cut and perfectly fitted colored bricks into the many curved patterns you'll see strolling along here. And because this is such a distinctively Miami thing, I suspect that some of the construction work coming up will take some inspiration from this design idea. More on that in a bit. Oh hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, I'd greatly appreciate a like. And please do feel free to drop comments below and subscribe if you'd like to see more soon. So here's the start of the current construction zone. The Miami Downtown Development Authority is working to transform a section of Flagler Street from Biscayne Boulevard to West 1st Avenue into an iconic festival-style street. Let me paraphrase quote what they have to say about it. Hopefully I'm not reading too much into their exact words. I've included a link to their statement page in the description if you want the exact words. Their stated objectives include 1. Create a festival street by raising the road to the same grade as the sidewalks, changing it to a curbless street, and adding decorative pavers in the lanes. 2. Make it more pedestrian friendly with expanded sidewalks, large shade trees, outdoor cafe dining space, improved lighting, public art, and public seating. 3. With new railroad crossing gates, allow for opportunities to close individual blocks of Flagler Street to vehicles for community gatherings, festivals, outdoor concerts, and other special events. 4. Minimize on-street parking to maximize pedestrian space with an emphasis on valet parking for drop-off and pickups. 5. Upgrade existing drainage systems to prevent flooding. Install new utilities like power, gas, fiber optics to prepare for future development of buildings in the area. 6. Hopefully make Flagler Street an attractive cultural and commercial destination for life in Miami again. So this project is going to create what's called a pedestrian mall. In the 1960s and 70s, a variety of these cropped up in many cities across America. Madison, Wisconsin's State Street is a familiar example to me. And the city of Miami Beach's Lincoln Road is even more elaborate. They don't all succeed as well as you might expect, though. The key to success seems to be putting a pedestrian mall in a place where people were already inclined to walk anyway, instead of building one and hoping it will attract people that weren't there before. In my opinion, Flagler Street is well placed for success by this gauge. This project represents a newer generation of these experiments. I have to admit that I'm not that impressed by the preview renderings I showed you earlier. They look surprisingly sterile, by contrast to Lincoln Road's lively design. I can only hope they are just a rough idea of what the project's architects are planning, and that they hired creative but level-headed designers to make it look as good as some other parts of Miami. One example I think shows off incredible taste is the shops at Mary Brickell Village. See my Brickell on a Friday Night video in the links below for examples of how amazing it looks. This beautification project is scheduled to take place over 2.5 years and proceed from section to section in 8-month cycles. I'll admit that I'm surprised that it's going to take that long. At first glance, it's hard to imagine why repaving a short road would take more than a month. But then this is a government project, and it is a very busy downtown area that can't simply be shut down. And there are underground services that are always at risk of being cut by a stray backhoe swipe. And surely the plans are in constant flux and won't be finalized until well after the project is finally completed. We'll see if the finished product is 2.5 years worth of amazing. I'm kind of hoping that as you're watching this walk, you're getting a feel for what seems to me to be a chicken or egg problem baked into this project. Flagler Street is old after all, and so are most of the buildings along it. They show their age. So you should be asking yourself what you might expect with a shiny new road paired with a lot of older buildings and businesses. And what's going to happen to the small shops and restaurants when most of the cars that are parked here are no longer allowed to? Is it possible that a project intended to breathe new life into this part of downtown will instead snuff out some of the last flames struggling to stay lit on a street racked by a year of pandemic restrictions? I have the sense that a success in this beautification project is going to count on a private renewal process along Flagler Street as well. Perhaps the owners of some of these old buildings will finally decide to sell or to invest in replacing them with newer and more exciting properties. I have a feeling that the Downtown Development Authority is counting on this parallel process being part of their plans. In any case, this is likely to mean that rents on retail shops, offices, bars, and so forth along Flagler are likely to rise very quickly as the street work progresses. This beautification project has been in the works for many years now. The Miami DDA page gives a bit of the history. A stakeholders group formed in 2011, and by 2014 they had received commitments of $6 million for the project. That quickly grew to $13 million. The current total budget is $27 million. It surprised me to find out that ground was first broken on this in 2016 on a few blocks of the West End. But the stakeholders were apparently not satisfied with the contractor at the time. I think I can see why. The sidewalks are nice, but they are just nice sidewalks. I haven't lived here long enough to know, but I doubt they have done much to transform Flagler Street. That illustrates how this project could just end up making nicer sidewalks and achieve little more. I think for it to change how people regard and use Flagler Street will require a change in behavior more than a change in infrastructure. It sounds like the vision has changed along the way as well. The original design concept was to make a road that mimics a railroad with concrete aggregate sidewalks, which sounds very boring to me. I do like that they were going to embed old steel rails as visual boundaries between the sidewalk and street. Neat idea. I like better what they have to say about the current design plan. Going curbless, they plan to keep people from parking or driving on the sidewalks by using bollards. This is probably unnecessary if police and the parking authority keep the occasional violator in check, but will probably reassure some pedestrians. We'll see if they can make it look nice too. But they invoke the Hibiscus Street and Rosemary Avenue renovation in downtown West Palm Beach. I think that project did a great job of blending street and sidewalk with an aesthetically interesting pattern in pavers. The buildings along these streets have done a nice job of adding greenery and other elements that mesh well with the street. The idea of introducing railroad crossing gates strikes me as practical but tacky. I actually think that they should not try too hard to make visitors see a railroad where there isn't one. It's fine to take inspiration from that idea when designing, but all the average visitor is going to care about is whether the space looks nice, symbolism or not. I'm hoping they design the gates to just look less ugly than a basic railroad crossing gate. Ideally, you wouldn't even notice their existence until they were down to let drivers know not to enter during an event. If you rewind this video and look at the more eastward part of Flagler Street, you'll notice that they widened it along the way and squeezed the sidewalks right up to the buildings on the margins. Doing so created parking and gave enough room for drivers to get around other cars waiting to turn. Further west here, you will see how the sidewalks are much wider. The driving lanes are narrower and there is less street parking. This may give a good idea of what all this will end up feeling like when construction is done. But this also emphasizes how having wide sidewalks doesn't mean much if there aren't hordes of people to use them. To me, the real question is, what will they do with Flagler Street once it is renovated to be more of a pedestrian mall? Will they make it cost-effective for event handlers to host art fairs, concert festivals, craft sales, and so on? Will retail shops and restaurants coordinate to occasionally do sidewalk sales and food tastings? Will local ethnic and interest communities hold parades? There's a lot of potential for this renovation project to work out well. I'm hoping that once the construction work is farther along and eventually done, Miami's city government will mostly just get out of the way and let Miamians go to town, so to speak. We shall see. So here we are, just about at West 1st Street, where the renovation project is set to end. To our left is the IRS, and to the right is the Miami-Dade Courthouse. The sidewalk here actually looks great. This is where they started the renovations, and I suspect they won't do much to change it. Maybe they'll replace the asphalt with the same decorative pavers they use on the rest of the street. I think it's interesting that a project that started with private donations from local businesses focused its work on beautifying government buildings first. I'm glad they are restarting this time at the other end, adjacent to Bayfront Park. I'm hopeful that they spend their $27 million war chest well to make Flagler Street even more beautiful. But more importantly, I hope the local businesses along Flagler can work together to capitalize on the end product of their investment. Hopefully, they will realize that the city is not going to bring more people to them. I think they're going to have to draw people by cooperating on simple things like sidewalk sales and farmers markets. Over time, other community organizers will realize opportunities to host more ambitious events along the street. If they do work together, they'll benefit themselves and the entire city in the process. Kira and I live near enough to see part of Flagler Street from our apartment. It'll be interesting to see how this project progresses. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautification project in the comments here. And please do see the links in the description below for more about the project and some of the history of Flagler and Miami. If you enjoyed this video, then I'd really appreciate a like. And I'd love for you to subscribe for more. It takes a lot of work to prepare even a simple video like this. I love knowing some of you are getting something out of these. Cheers!